It's bigger. It's louder. It's better than ever. This still isn't your typical motorsports podcast. This is the 10th anniversary of Crush This, a monster truck podcast brought to you by J Concepts. For 10 years, your hosts, the monster truck Canucker Brad Shaw and Dan Chichagash, have brought you into the minds and personalities of the monster truck industry. Strap in and hold on tight. This is Crush This!
What is going on, everybody? My name is Bradshaw, also known as the Monster Truck Canucker, and welcome to a brand new episode of Crush This. It's going to be a little bit of a different episode, guys. I am kind of playing the role of producer tonight. Our good friend Mark Werner of MW1 Entertainment is going to be the main host of the episode tonight. This is going to be an awesome episode. But before we get into the episode, and he will introduce our guests when we get to his section here, just a little bit of housekeeping here. Next week's episode, guys, is going to be a pre-recorded episode with Mark Schrader of the Devastator Monster Truck. He was also announcer at Speed Channel. And then the week after that will be a live episode with Mark because we couldn't get through everything just with one episode. So we're going to have a back-to-back episode, one pre-recorded and one live. So it's going to be an awesome episode next week, guys. We have a couple other things here. Go check out MTA, our buddy Steve Jones Monster Truck Attitude. If you're into diecast monster truck racing, downhill monster truck racing, check that out. We have our team, Crush This Motorsports, on there. Plenty of other teams. Go check out what Steve does. Thank you for the love, Steve. Go check out our merch store on Spreadshop. New designs coming at some point. Work is kind of been busy for me. So at some point, the new designs will be coming out for our 10th anniversary with the old school kind of TNT Motorsports-ish logo, what we created for this current season. Check out our pals at jconcepts.net. We thank them for being our main sponsor for this 10th anniversary season. Go check out our code Crush This on their website, jconcepts.net, for 15% off all your items. Anything from tires, wheels, bodies, you name it, go there. So many of our buddies are sponsored by J Concepts. Josh Rhodes, my co-host Dan Agosh, so many others. Go check that out. Our buddy Bryce Kenny has his book, Geared for Life, Making a Shift into Your Full Potential. Go check that out on Amazon. Bryce kicking ass in Monster Mutt this season. It's cool to see him back in the truck he debuted in. And if you want to help Mike Welch out with the People's Pete, we have it up right there. That's where you can send your money order to, or you could. We'll have Mike on eventually. I think next month we're going to try to have him on again, and he'll have more information about that. But before we get into our episode with Mark and his special guests, we have a couple of sponsor videos to play. And as soon as we get through those, it'll be handed over to Mr. Mark Werner of MW1 Entertainment, which we thank him for also sponsoring the podcast as well. Stay tuned.
Are you ready to get in on the action here on the Monster Truck Attitude YouTube channel? Look no further. Head over to Facebook where you can sign up for all the great events we host right here on the MTA YouTube channel. Be sure to sign up for the events and register your name and get locked in with a monster truck of your own and get ready for the great thrills and spills right here on the MTA YouTube channel. Again, find us on Facebook, register for these events, and you soon will be competing in all the great events. We hope to see you there, and get ready for the wild and crazy action. Be sure to subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss a beat right here on the Monster Truck Attitude YouTube channel.
Hello, everyone. Mark Werner here, guest host for this week's episode of Crush This. Thank you to Dan Agosh and Bradshaw for letting me be the guest host. And this week, I wanted to take us back to the early days of monster trucks, particularly the West Coast monster truck scene. And to do that, I wanted to bring on two of the legends that helped to establish the monster truck industry in that part of the country. So here this week, we've got on the builder, owner, and driver of Cardiff Giant and Hawiallan Punch, Mr. Brian Cardiff. And we've got Brian's crew guy and Hawiallan Punch driver, Tim Delany, on this week. Brian, Tim, how y'all doing tonight?
Good to see you, Mark.
Hi, guys. Good to see you, Mark.
Cool deal. Now, Brian, we'll start with you. So when you're starting out in the West Coast scene, let's kind of go back to the beginning. How'd you get involved in the West Coast off-road motorsports scene, and kind of talk about how that led to you going and getting involved in the monster truck industry?
Yeah, I had a lift kit company back in the 80s. The big trucks were kind of coming into the market, the bigger, 36-inch tires or 33-inch tires or whatever. So I had a lift kit company, and back in the 80s, it was about, just raising your truck up and, trying to, build a big truck. And actually, I went to, I had a part that would help improve the steering on a raised truck. And then I took it to the Score Show to market it. And that's the first time I saw a monster truck. I saw Jeff Dane's King Kong. I'm like, oh my! I was shocked seeing it. 66-inch tall tires and 5-ton axles and stuff like that. And then I had asked him if what he would charge to put our name company on it and market my product. And turned out that it was a little expensive. And so I just kept building my truck up and took some of the ideas and built a monster truck to market my product. It wasn't about crushing cars or anything like that.
Oh, yeah, and then your truck also, too, started out on the 48-inch tires, and I believe we got a couple photos of it, as you can see on screen, of it on the 48s. What was the initial public reaction like when it was just going out there on the 48-inch tires?
I would drive that truck around town, around Fremont, and that was the one that I used to. That truck became Cardiff Giant, but I drive it around town, and there you go. That was in Fremont, getting pulled over, and it was kind of a novelty. The police guys and stuff got a kick out of it, and that photo actually made the Argus local newspaper. I didn't get a ticket. And then, but they did say, hey, keep this thing off the street. You can't drive that. And those axles, I went to the next level. Those became were sold to Bruce Galt, the Barbarian. He bought those axles, bought those tires, and he took his van and turned it into Barbarian. And then I went to the next step of 5-ton and 66-inch tall tires. Yeah, there you go. And it was just a progression of next thing you know, you need more power and 2 transfer cases and a bigger motor, and just kept progressing.
Oh, definitely. And then now, as you mentioned, you had your business at the time, so it was being used as a promotional tool. And it starts off with that white paint scheme, and then you eventually painted it red, which we have a photo of on screen. And this is all to promote your business. You're not crushing cars at this time, if I'm correct.
We're not crushing cars, and that was in Arnold, California. And then I got a call from then we took it to the Score Show. The following year that I first met Jeff Dane and saw his truck, the following year we were there, and Bigfoot was there, and I was advertising my business. And then I got a call from a gentleman, Dave Matthews, and said, "Hey, do you crush cars?" And the answer was, "Yeah, sure, yeah, we crush cars." And they, set up some cars. And he said, "We'd like to see it." And they, sent him and they came up to where I lived and wanted to see the performance. And then, hey, can you do this show for me? And sure. And threw out a dollar figure. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll crush cars for that. Next thing you know, we were not advertising the business anymore. We were out, doing shows and crushing cars.
It's interesting that you mentioned Dave Matthews. Dave, a major promoter on the West Coast for years and years. I was told a story that at least one of the early car crushes that you did with, I believe it was Cardiff, that basically you went out there, put on a show, the truck's dripping oil, and Dave just turned to you and said, I like it, I'll see you next week. Is there any truth to that story?
Oh, yeah. When he first came out to see the truck and asked if we crushed cars, and it didn't go well. And I said, well, here's what and I basically said, well, that's how we do it. Kidding, because it was a disaster. And I said, well, here's what's wrong. We're building it, and it needs 2 transfer cases, and we were going to put a stall speed torque converter in it to get more power and this and that. And he said, great. He said, I mean, Dave was anybody that knew him would know this is true. He was just an awesome guy. And kind of a jokester. And he said, yeah, get it together. And I want you to do, I think it was Reading was his first show. And we put it together, and gamble paid off and did really, really well at his show.
Oh yeah, and you also mentioned to me too, I think the second show after that was the Portland Coliseum. I think we have video from one of the years you crushed cars. They're playing on the screen now, 1984.
Yeah, that because we have the 2 the winches in the front. That was a heavy truck. Yeah, that was the first. Yeah, and that was before the paint scheme. So that was the first Portland Coliseum show, and then we did a second one for him.
Exhibition. Dave Matthews. Oh, that's great video you got. That's before the paint.
Yeah, there's some neat stuff and neat photos. Mark, I got to give you credit finding all of this stuff. A lot more than I have.
Thank you. I made sure to do my research.
Mike Welch will tell the story. Brian, everybody went over cars lengthwise back then. Brian was actually the first guy, as far as I know, and Mike Welch was there in Portland. And Brian goes, you know what? I'm going to go sideways over. And everybody.
And that's when we started to kind of bump up the, have it like pop up in the air, but it was
crowd. And
nothing compared to what they do nowadays. And you look at those videos before the show started out, and it's like, that's crazy. Our trucks probably wouldn't hold up, but kind of had to start somewhere to maybe stuff. But yeah, sideways. You're right, Tim. Sideways was the one that was kind of bumping up a little more of a bounce.
Yeah, and especially when you're bouncing. We barely wore straps. We didn't wear helmets back then.
No helmets, no seat belts.
No seat belts. We just bounced around.
Yeah.
That's what's wrong with us today, Mark. Is that's why we hit our head too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I gotta ask this too. Did the crowd's reaction to it, did that surprise you at all, or was it just, wow, this is cool?
Yeah, they that's my shop and stuff. But yeah, it was still, I mean, it was a novelty back in the 80s. Like you think about Bob Chandler, who's started this whole thing. I mean, he built his truck to advertise his business, and look what it's turned into. But yeah, it was people were really I probably say the best way to say it would be how impressed I was to see Jeff Dane's King Kong for the first time, and I'm building big trucks and stuff. It's kind of how crowds saw it. Like, here's a street truck with tires that are 6 foot tall and weigh 1,000 pounds, and something that you'd possibly drive on the street but never would. But yeah, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, and then now you're running with Dave as one of his trucks, and from what I gathered, he was one of the main promoters you were working for at that time. And then obviously the truck keeps on growing, and as you mentioned, you're going full-time into this now, and then you changed the paint job up. Why'd you change the paint job from the red, if I may ask?
It was just to be a little more flashy. Thought maybe a little bit, better looking is all. And then, adding the, chrome and the roll bars and, things like that. That was actually sponsored to us, given those things. But the paint scheme was to be just a little bit more flashy, I guess.
Oh, I got you. And then, too, this photo here, so this was the early days, and there was a lot of different techniques you guys were doing. Kind of explain to the fans what's going on in this photo here with the gentleman hanging on for dear life in the back.
So this guy, Corky, was a rodeo clown, and so he's used to being chased down by bulls, to save the riders and stuff. And so he's, used to, being in those kind of dangerous situations, and he wanted to ride in the back, and so it's a rough ride. And he said, "No, don't worry." He said, "I can handle it." And then, like Tim said, we started going over the car sideways, because at the sideways you get more of a bump to get a little bit of air. And it was like, okay, we'll do it. And we went towards the crowd, and kind of forgot he was back there, and he held on for dear life, and he was he just held on.
Oh, yeah, and I gotta ask, too, I heard a rumor, too, that you toured with some sort of, like, giant statue thing as well at one point. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, there's there were Cardiff Giant. There's a story about Cardiff Giant. My last name's Cardiff, and there was something called Cardiff Giant, and so I had a wood carving. Again, it was more to advertise my business and my location, so we had a big carving. And we actually hauled that down to the score show for our display at the score show, at the 1983 score show, or 84, sorry, 1984 score show. So we brought the truck down there and displayed this big 12-foot tall wood carving of the Cardiff Giant.
It was huge.
I got you. I got to ask, whatever happened to the giant 12-foot tall wooden carving?
I don't know. It was left up in Arnold, because we moved out of Arnold and we had it sitting there, and then I don't know exactly what happened to it. I
got you. And then now you're touring the circuit, doing shows up and down the West Coast for Dave and other promoters. And then during that time, Tim, that's where you come into the picture. So why don't you tell the fans how you got involved with the Brian?
That would have been sometime around in 85, middle 85, I think it was, because I think Brian sold his 2.5 tons in the 48s to Bruce, and I was racing mud bogs at the time. So it was probably close to that. And they came to Fresno. I lived in Fresno, and just like Brian, I was going to college, and I had a 4-wheel drive shop, so I built tall trucks, and I had a tall truck. And so there was a street called Blackstone and Shaw, and Brian and Dewey were parked on the corner there. So I pulled in there with my truck with the 14-inch kit and 40s, and we just started talking. And next thing I know, Brian goes, "Hey, let's get together." And I was working with a guy named Rance, master fabricator, Rance Minyard Mud Bogs, and we got together with Brian and Dewey. And I think, Brian, you'd blown up both lockers in the Cardiff Giant, and we had to pull them apart and stuff. So we worked together, and Brian said, "Hey, why don't you, come work with me?" And I left college and went and had fun.
Joined the crew.
I can understand that. I can definitely understand that.
Yeah, I left college right away. He said, "Hey, come on the road with me," and that's traveling gypsies or whatever we were called back then. But I mean, we had a lot of fun, a lot of traveling, a lot of eating at places, and you get to a show. Sometimes we didn't have a room, and we slept in the barns at the fairgrounds and slept on hay, and we didn't have sponsors back then. I mean, that was all Brian's money, Brian's everything. Yeah, he said the sponsorship for the roll bar in the front and the winches maybe and the front bumper, but we didn't have sponsors giving us thousands of dollars to travel. I mean, we would go from show to show, shoestring budget, and we got paid pretty good.
And Dave would set us up in the the hotels and stuff like that, because we don't. Dave would have us. He was pretty sharp and a great marketer. He would go in a week early into a show, and then he would have us display around town, the different areas and stuff. And so it was a good time.
Oh, definitely. And it's interesting. You mentioned Dewey Middlecamp.
Dewey Middlecamp,
Yeah, because he was your original crew guy. You were telling me, and a very good friend of you and Tim's. Kind of tell us how Dewey got involved too, because he's kind of a name that gets forgotten in the West Coast scene a lot now.
So Dewey worked for Dave Matthews. He worked for the promoter, and he would sort of run the shows for truck pooling and stuff. And then like Tim and I clicked, Dewey and I clicked, and he started doing more stuff with the monster truck. And then Dave, since we were kind of exclusive with Dave and actually Bill, Super Pools were the two big promoters that we dealt with. Dewey was kind of Dave's guy that worked with us for the for the shows, but that's how we got hooked up with Dewey.
Oh, I got you. And then now, so you three are a team, and you're running with Dave, and you're doing obviously too the different techniques, methodologies to go and promote the shows. And one of those methodologies that was used was floating the truck before a show. And this was done successfully, as fans can see on screen, with Cardiff Giant on several occasions. And then there's the one occasion that it didn't. So let's kind of go through what happened that day, because at that time it wasn't really common for monster trucks to flip, and it was even less common for a truck to flip in the water, which is a whole new element of really danger, for lack of a better phrase. So, what kind of happened that day to cause that incident?
Yeah, so Dave Matthews did a promotion that we were going to float it, and we knew the truck floated. We played that scene off. There's my backflip. Crazy. Dewey crossed my lap and said, "Hey, this thing is sinking," and he crossed over me and went out the window. Before I did it, But so we knew the truck would float. I was late getting to the show. I had to fly in because I was coming from Washington, and my plane was delayed. And there was a big crowd there, and a lot of people were like, "Come on, when's this thing going to happen? We've been waiting." And when so Dewey, I talked to him. Dewey was afraid that he was going to have to drive in the water, and he hadn't done that before. So what he did was he called a service truck, and he thought, "Hey, let's balloon these tires up to make sure it doesn't sink. More air, the better," which was overlooked when I got there. I never thought that was done. So, those 66-inch tall tires could be 66-inch tall with a certain amount of air pressure, but then you can balloon them up to 6 feet. A lot of air. So and nobody checked it. When I got there was, the crowd was anxious, and they're like, "Oh, come on, about time, get this show on the road." Nobody paid attention to how much air was in the tires. That was number one. Number two, nobody knew that it was a rock quarry. So you go in, 3 feet, 4 feet, and you hit this, 10-foot rock. It wasn't an even shoreline to go into. So we're climbing over stuff like this, going into the water, and then the tires are, blown so big. So it was just a disaster kind of waiting to happen. But we did float the truck for Four Wheel Drive magazine, 2 weeks before. And as I mentioned, the media was there, the news people were there, and they came up. We were playing it off like this is the first time we've ever tried this. And then the news guy came up to me and said, "Hey, does this thing really float? Is this really your first time that you're trying this?" And I had leveled with him. I said, No, we've done this before. It'll float. And he said, "Well, I'm thinking about filming in the back of the truck with my camera." And it turned out he did. He finally said, "No, I better not. good thing. He didn't. He said he had a $60,000 camera. That would have been a disaster. But that's why it flipped over. Oh, there you go.
The turtle.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And Tim, I gotta ask, as Brian's crew guy at that time, you find out about this, and what was your reaction to hearing, well, it floated upside down?
Yeah, he called me and told me to turn the news on. I was supposed to be. This was in Reno, Sparks, Nevada. And I was supposed to come up that weekend for the show, and he goes, "Stay home." Turn the news on. We flipped the truck in the lake, and I said, "You did what?" So I turned the news on, and sure enough, 6 o'clock news, monster truck flips in the lake in Sparks, Nevada, and I'm just looking, shaking my head. And Brian calls and says, "Hey, I don't know if we're going to get this back together, blah, blah, blah." My wife now, her and her husband were instrumental in putting that truck back together. You have the four-wheel drive magazine. Her husband had a four-wheel drive shop, Donnie's four-wheel drive world. We called it Wally World. And her and her husband and a crew of people put the truck back together. And Lori, my wife, tells the story of when they opened the door, like in a movie when the car's been sunk in a lake for a few weeks, and they open the door and fish come out. Well, fish actually came out. So, but yeah, that was a bad day that day. But they worked at it. The paint was, I think they were still painting it when you drove into the arena. I think they had a portable painter, and they were finishing up the paint job on Cardiff Giant. They really busted their butt.
As we were pulling in, yeah.
And we've got. I'm sorry, I was going to say we got video of the rollover.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Dewey crawled across my lap, and he said, "This is going over." And yep, there it goes.
I got to give you a 7.5 on the dive, Brian. I'm just going to be honest right there.
See it bobbing like that? It's floating. It's floating. It's actually
it's floating. But somebody went out and made hats after that.
Yeah, Dave Matthews.
Dave Matthews made hats.
Joe and Dave, and they sold them all at the show.
So I got to pop in for just a second. This has been such a great episode so far. I want to ask that shot right there. How deep was that water?
Well, like I say, there was actually big boulders in on the shore. So we were climbing over boulders, but when you got past them, that was, I'm going to say, probably 10 feet.
Oh wow!
Although the cab was completely crushed when they pulled it out. They had to pull it out the deeper water to get it out, and they had two. If you think about what it would have cost to get that truck out, but everybody, there was a lot of people that helped and didn't charge anything to do this, and they tied a cable around the front frame and the back frame, and they pulled it like apart to get it up, buoyant, and then a third cable to flip it over to get it back on its wheels, and then pulled it out. It was a big chore. And then we had some city officials come over, and the police come over, and who gave you permission to do this, and all that stuff. And Dave Matthews handled all of that stuff. But and we were there. Luckily, we had a week to rebuild it, and we did, because Dave was up there a week early to promote the show in Reno. But that was the water was probably 10 feet where it went over.
That's great. That was only 10 feet. That's crazy. But I'm going to go in the background. I just needed to pop in and ask that question. Thank you, guys.
Oh yeah, and that's something too you just touched on. That truck went from completely waterlogged to performing in a show in literally a week, which for 1980s, that's impressive.
We had a lot of help and a lot of people. Like I say, Donnie and Lori were a big part of that, knowing who they knew. We had somebody that donated their shop, their welder. We had just so much help. All the crews that got it out of that reservoir. So there was a lot of help. It was had we not had that, it would have been impossible.
That's the way the '80s were, Mark. I mean, everybody helped everybody, and if you broke an axle, somebody had an axle. If we didn't have one, and it was just a great camaraderie between the monster truck people. Just everybody having fun and having a good time and help out however you can. And I think that hopefully they still do that today.
And it's funny because Dave, with all that publicity, I mean, Dave, again, he was just a genius, and he was one of the nicest guys. Said that he's not with us anymore, but he sold out all 3 days of the show. It was just complete sellout all three nights. Couldn't buy that that advertisement with all the news coverage and what was going on.
Oh yeah, and speaking of the advertising, you were the first monster truck in the New York Times, I believe. What is it like holding that distinction?
Yeah, we made Associated Press, which was in every newspaper in the country way back when they had newspapers. Of course, they had it's called Associated Press, and every newspaper printed, and it was called. Everybody had a different title for it, but it was the big truck, the Cardiff Giant with the wood statue, and Dave Matthews' niece underneath, showing how tall it was by reaching up to the bumper. So it was kind of in the early '80s a really unique photo. Like, here's this big wood statue and this big monster truck, and so but it did I guess it made Associated Press in every newspaper in the country.
Yeah, so you run the Cardiff Giant truck, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe you drove Cardiff Giant, if I'm correct.
No, I didn't. I was just a crew guy. I just made sure it ran, and Dewey and I did a lot. Brian would come in on certain shows, and I just traveled with Dewey and Brian, and if something broke, we all got together and fixed it, or I put it back together, and that was my deal with Cardiff Giant.
Oh yeah, and then you run the Cardiff Giant truck, and then about 85, 86, you go and sell that to Seth Dalton. Maybe explain a bit how that deal came about and why you sold it.
So he made me an offer, I guess I couldn't refuse. And at first I told him, no, it's not for sale. And then he kept coming back, and I said, well, sure. I mean, everything's for sale, right? So I took his offer. And then turned out that someone had told me that he had a setup for a Mountain Dew commercial. And it was in, if you look on YouTube, it was on a Mountain Dew commercial. They kind of wanted a square body truck or something, from what I've told. So there you go.
That's it.
Yep. And it was Cardiff Giant was used. There it is. Was used in the Mountain Dew commercial.
I got you. And then
we went on to build the Hawiallan Punch, and then Seth made me an offer on that one as well.
Let's talk about. I was going to go to Hawiallan Punch. So that's a great segue, actually. So Hawiallan Punch. So you sell the first truck, and how much later, after selling Cardiff, did you start Punch? Because it wasn't that much gap between the two trucks.
It was right away. It was.
Okay.
I mean, Tim may know more of.
It was a couple months. Brian
couple
called.
Months after we started building Hawiallan Punch.
Yeah, Brian called. It was a couple months, 2 at the most, and then he called me up and said, "Hey, we're going to build another truck." Dewey had gone to work for Seth, and he was driving the Cameo, the Chevy, back east somewhere for Seth. And so Brian said, "Hey, let's build another truck." And so I went up to Disco Bay, Discovery Bay, and we had the hauler. And Brian already had a truck, 4-wheel drive, that we ended up just using the body off of. And we loaded up the axles and loaded up everything. And Brian and I took off for Reno, Nevada. And the beginning, either the end of November or the 1st of December of '86, and with a host of people at Pacific Painting, we all put that thing together in 19 days. And
we had a connection because the Cardiff Giant, when we rebuilt Cardiff Giant in Reno, so we had a connection of shops and people that helped and stuff, and so we thought there was kind of no better place to do it than there. And that was Cow Palace, San Francisco.
yeah,
it's interesting too, because Tim, you mentioned the time spent to build the truck being only 19 days, which is, especially for that time period, unheard of. So I know a lot of work had to go into that, and a lot of help too, as you mentioned.
yeah, there was a host of people working on it. I don't remember how many, Brian. I think there was 8 or 9 people total. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was a lot of days, no days off, right, Tim?
No days off.
Saturdays, Sundays,
we had to stay out of the casinos. I mean, Brian, we had funny stories. I mean, Dewey and I went out one night and we stayed out all night, and Brian got mad at us, but that's another story. But they talked Brian into a straight rail frame. We were going to use just like Cardiff was, they used the original frame and weld onto it. And somebody came up with the idea of a straight rail frame like they were starting to do back then, and it just all came together, and everybody worked together. And we didn't even have time to test it. We pulled it out of I think it was, if I'm right, Brian, it was USA Motorsports, and we went to Canada, BC Place, and we pulled that truck out of this paint booth, and it was still wet, and it was snowing.
Yeah, headed up to Canada for sure.
It was snowing, and we pulled that thing up. We didn't even test it. It was on transport tires. We pulled it up on the trailer, and we took off for Canada. And then that's a whole nother story, what happened to it up in BC Place. But that was the first time Robbie Knievel had jumped. It was a car crush. We were the only monster truck, and it was a mud bog, and Robbie Knievel was jumping inside the dome up in BC Place.
Oh, I got you. And I got to ask too, how'd you come up with the name Hawiallan Punch?
So at the time I was pitching, Hawiallan Punch was owned by Delany out of San Francisco, and I was pitching them to get a sponsorship. Hawiallan Punch, I thought Nestle Crunch, Big O tires, and so was doing these art renditions and selling them and say, hey, pitching the idea. And then I thought, you know what? Let's just paint it up like Hawiallan Punch, and they'll really get an idea, and maybe they'll come on board with it. The way your brain works at 24 years old to do something like that, not knowing all the legal, part of it. So that was the idea, was to pitch it like that and then see if they would come on board. And like Tim said, we were also thinking about, there was a 50-50 shot whether it was going to be Hawiallan Punch or Nestle Crunch, to pitch them with the idea. And then if they didn't like it, of course, we would repaint it. But I ended up selling the truck to Seth with his offer before, Hawiallan Punch ever, came out with their answer to do it.
So I got a little question here. Being, you guys were in California, from California and everything like that. And another famous California race car at the time was Roland Leong's Hawaiian, funny cars. He was huge. Yes. That, he had that name even in the 90s with, the Hawaiian Dream Vacations and all that. Did you guys ever do anything with Roland Leong and with the popularity of Hawiallan Punch around that time, or not really?
No, we never met him. And that was my thought, was because they were in racing. I thought maybe they would convert over to monster truck racing, because they were already established in that. And that was the only reason, kind of tipped the scales to do Hawiallan Punch versus Nestle Crunch.
Okay, it was just a thought, because I'm a huge drag racing nerd as well, and Roland Leong, who's passed on, is such a legend in that industry. So
yeah,
thanks for answering my question.
And also too, with Hawiallan Punch, Tim, that's where your monster truck driving career starts. What was it like going from crew guy to monster truck driver? And Brian, what was it like for you watching Tim drive your truck now?
I remember the first Brian called me. And I was to go to Placerville, and we can go back to BC Place real quick.
Sure.
So this is the first time the truck. We get in the arena, and I'm driving, and I wrap the throttle, and it just doesn't feel right. Something's not right with the truck. I mean, that 540 cubic inch blown motor, at least 1,000 horsepower. This thing should just roast. Something doesn't seem right. So anyway, the show comes up. We're going out. Dewey gets in the drive. Dewey's going to drive. I'm going to show him how to get out to this arena. He comes out and he bumps the cars and he wraps the throttle. And it had a boat water pump on it. It blew the bottom radiator hose right off of it. So now everything's steam. So he turns the fans on so he can see, and he hits the cars, and the truck just mushes into the cars, and he blew the transmission out of it. So here's this beautiful Hawiallan Punch truck with brand new Emerald paint, and we're pulling it back with a backhoe or whatever they were pulling us back, and all the Canadians were throwing beer and hamburgers and hot dogs at us. And real quick, when I first got there, I had to go find parts, and I found two of the biggest Canadian guys I could find. They were like 7 foot tall. I said, "You guys stick with us," and thank God they were there. Anyway, They pull us back into this little alcove, and the Canadians are throwing all this stuff. So anyway, we got up and out of that. So then we come back, and Brian, we're doing a show in Placerville, and Brian shows up and says, there's a couple things we got to fix, and call me after the show, and takes off. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute here. Okay, I can do this. And so Dave Matthews walks up to me and he goes, okay, this is what you do. You go over the cars this way, you go over the cars that way, you get out and wave at the crowd, and that's it. Well, I was 21 years old. I went over the cars this way. I went over them that way. I turned around. I went over them this way. Dave's over there going like this.
No more.
He got all mad at me, but the show went good. And then from then on, it's like riding a bike. Once you get on, once you go over cars, it's all over.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And then also, too, the crowd response to Hawiallan Punch as a truck, minus the BC Place show, overall, from what I've gathered, the crowd response was great to it. You told me stories where it was even beating Bigfoot in some of the cheer-offs at times.
Yeah, we did Los Angeles Coliseum, and I think what they really liked the truck, and I think a lot of it was we bought the motor out of a world record holder boat called Billy the Kid. And the guy was getting out of the sport, and it just had too much horsepower, so we had to take some horsepower off of it, and that's why we were breaking things. But when we went into the Los Angeles Coliseum, the zoomies, there was flames coming out. It was very, very loud. It was one of the loudest trucks, and that's what I think people really liked. The noise. So when they would do the clap and applause for their favorite truck, we won that. And then the promoter came up to me and said, I don't know who it was, but someone complained that if that truck was at another show, they wouldn't show up because they felt that with the zoomies, meaning the exhaust coming straight out, that if it through a valve or something like that, somebody can get hurt on it. But yeah, I think there was a big crowd favorite because of the the motor, the sound, the flames coming out. But people like that truck.
The paint combination was just a beautiful truck, and everybody flocked around it, especially the kids.
And maybe the little guy on the door.
Yeah, there's a guy up in Canada or somewhere that's just built an RC car, and we helped him with what the stickers were on the back, and we had to scratch our head and remember what they were. It's been so long ago, but the truck was just a really nice truck, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I got to ask both of you. So they were two separate trucks, Cardiff Giant and Hawiallan Punch. Out of the two separate trucks, separate chassis and everything, which one would you say was the more popular, Punch or Giant?
I think Yeah, Cardiff Giant did more shows, but I think Hawaiian Punch was a better truck. I liked Hawaiian Punch.
Yeah, I think they both. I mean, Brian was been doing this since what, '83 with Cardiff. Yeah. So, I mean, he was one of the first guys out there, especially the West Coast. I mean, everything was back east, we weren't getting very much publicity out here. The people that were running, Welch, Boehner, all the other guys that we ran with, Galt, and Cardiff Giant was just a home truck. I mean, for California. And then everybody knew it. And then when Punch came out with the different, straight rail frame and the really nice paint job, and not saying Cardiff didn't have, Cardiff had a really nice paint job too. They were both just eye-catching trucks, and they were proportional. Punch was a pretty tall, but, Cardiff Giant, that was proportional to the 66s, and it looked good. It wasn't, 2-3 feet above 66s. It was proportional, and the truck ran great. It had the right amount of horsepower, and we didn't break. I mean, when it had the lockers front and rear, we blew some axles. We took those back out, and I don't remember breaking many more axles, Brian, after that. Everybody breaks axles, but it was just an all-around great truck. I'm not partial to either one, and you guys know that I'm doing the tribute truck, and I'm going to try and incorporate both trucks into one. So I just enjoyed them both. And I thank Brian for giving me the opportunity to, work with him.
Yeah, I had more history with Cardiff Giant because it developed into, car crusher versus advertising. And then Hawaiian Punch was built to, crush cars and stuff. And nothing like what it is today. It's so advanced now. They're both good trucks.
Oh, yeah. And I got to ask, too, what was it like seeing the West Coast scene really start to develop at this time? Because your truck's coming on out, then Bruce gets involved with Barbarian, and you start seeing these other trucks. What was it like seeing the scene start to flourish at that time?
Yeah, I think it was it started to show, popularity with the King Crunch coming out, and I saw the magazine came out with Virginia Beach Beast, I think it was, and stuff. And then we were at the 84 car score show with Bigfoot coming out West Coast, and I think at that time Bigfoot had 3 or 4 trucks, so it was obvious that it was, getting to be more and more trucks showing up on the scene.
Because we were just a sideshow. See, it was all tractor pull back then. There was no side by side. Brian and I both got out as side by side. We did a little bit of obstacle course racing where we'd race by ourselves for time, and then a couple side by sides. And then they did Mike Welch and Jim Oldacre and those guys. They did one back east on TV, Race of the Monster Truck. I don't remember what it was called. You would remember, Mark.
Return of the Monster Trucks, I think.
Something like that. And we got out when it was getting popular with that, but we were just the attraction at the end. So everybody waited until the end of the show after the tractor pull was done or the mud bog, and we take 15 minutes, push the cars out, get them set up, and then crush cars, and then we're done. So,
and now I look back now at some of the photos and stuff, and the stuff that we were running over, road runners. It's like the junk dealers would haul them in, and I would love to have the stuff that we were crushing. We did a show in Reno, and they brought out 2 Volkswagen vans. You know what those are worth nowadays?
Yeah.
And we had to go over them, front to back. But some of the cars I look at now, and some of the photos, like, gosh, I wish I had that car.
Yeah.
To restore it instead of running them over. That's crazy.
And that's what happened. They couldn't, like everybody says, they don't crush cars anymore. Well, we can't find cars anymore. So they were donated back then.
Yeah.
Dave may have given them, $500 for us 12, 13 cars. whatever. They would do it as long as they could get passes to get in the show, and they would use their tow trucks, and that was their advertisement. So it didn't really cost us anything for cars. And then when we crushed all the cars, they just, you weren't getting cars. They weren't giving them to you anymore. So
nowadays there's no cars. It's all dirt tracks and mountains and stuff like that. But like you said, Tim, it was here's the end of the show, and here's a lot of it was kind of the grand finale around mud bogs and truck pools, and here's a 10-minute show of monster trucks and or monster truck one to do the show. But that's what it was like 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then you run Hawiallan Punch, and you ran that for, I think, Tim, you said you built it late '86, if I'm correct.
Yeah, we built it at the end of '86, and so it was.
Yep.
We ran it, and then, like Brian said, Seth wanted another truck, and Brian sold it to Seth, and it went from there.
Yep, and it became the Flying Eagle truck that Seth ran. That we have it on screen right there.
Yeah,
and then
he sold it to somebody in Japan or something. Yeah, I've seen that picture. Yeah.
Yeah, and Tim, you were telling me you drove the last show where it was under Brian's ownership before it went to Seth, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that was the first show that, if I remember correctly, that was the first show not the first show for Seth, but we did it in Paso Robles. That was the first show they did AM/PM Boss. And after the show, I handed the keys to Seth and Jimmy Reese, and that was it. I took the hauler and the trailer home, and then I hooked up with Brian later and dropped all that off, and that was the end of a great run.
Oh, definitely. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
But we're going to keep it going, as you know, and everybody knows. I'm building a tribute truck to that. I asked Brian for his permission if he wouldn't mind if I did that. So we've been toying with that, and we're getting close. We should hopefully have it done by this summer, and we're still playing with paint schemes. And the thing about doing a tribute truck is you're going to get tore up on the internet that it's not the truck, it's not Hawiallan Punch. Well, no, it's not, but it's a good memory. So I'm trying to combine Hawiallan Punch and Cardiff Giant together, and because they were two great trucks in the '80s, and I think everybody will like the final product. It's not going to be as tall as Hawiallan Punch, and also I do have a few of these left with Brian's and my signatures on them. There's not many of them with Brian's signature. So if anybody wants an 8x10 of that, they can first message me on Facebook, and I'll be happy to send them to them. I don't ask any money for them. I'll just send them to you.
Oh, look at Bruce. Hey, guys. Bruce popped up on the screen there.
Bruce did?
Yeah, it says Bruce called. Hi, guys, from Facebook.
There you go.
He's another awesome guy. I mean, Bruce Scott, love him.
You don't find a better guy than Bruce Galt.
No.
We traveled, did so many shows. Like I said before, I did mud bogs before I met Brian, and I met Bruce actually before I met Brian, and with his van. And on my Facebook page, there's a picture of my Dodge parks next to Barbarian, and he was in my wedding. Well, Brian was in my wedding too. So we go back 40 years now, and we've all changed and gotten older, but we're still friends. We still hang out.
Yeah, my other co-host Dan Agosh just sent me a message, and he said he needs one of those cards. So I don't know if Mark, you can get a hold of Cheech and figure that out, but Cheech wants a card.
No problem. I'll get him to him.
All right. So if you don't mind me, Mark, I'm going to take over a little bit here. We have normally on the episodes, we have fans asking questions. We got a couple of fan questions if you guys are down to answer some.
Sure.
Our good buddy, Mike Hedman, awesome dude. He says, question for Brian and Tim. Did you guys ever come east of the Rockies with Cardiff Giant and or Hawiallan Punch?
Well, we did New Mexico.
Yeah,
That's about as far as.
That's about as far as we went.
Yeah, New Mexico. We did Idaho. Well, that's not east of the Rockies, but yeah, I think the farthest we went into Canada, New Mexico, Idaho. Yeah,
That was like
mostly.
California. It was California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Utah, Idaho. That whole circle. And then when we wanted to freeze our butts off, we went down to New Mexico. And I mean, we left
when
there
you,
in the
when you want
winter
to
one
freeze your
time.
butt off, when you want to freeze your butt
5
off, you come to
degrees.
Canada.
Huh?
When you freeze, when you want to freeze your butt off, you come up to Canada.
Well, yeah. It was warm, I think, we were up there when we built the truck first. It was not too cold. I just got lost up there.
Yeah.
But,
BC,
every street you look down, you can see BC Place, but I couldn't get there. But anyway,
BC's not as cold as like here in Alberta gets, right?
Okay.
Like right now it's fairly mild here, but another question, Kirk Nagy, besides rolling it basically in the water, did you ever roll Cardiff Giant like on like dirt, like just like tip it up or anything?
No, we that was the only rollover was the water.
Another West Coast legend popping his head in, Mr. Gary Schott coming in here.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, awesome.
Says Dave, great businessman, the good old days.
Yeah,
Gary was the best. I mean, well, I say that about everybody, but Gary, we used to always draw tickets. Dave would say, grab a number, and depending on who went first, second, third, fourth, how many trucks. And Bruce would always pull number 1, and I'd always take his number because he had 48s, and him going sideways over cars, we didn't want to make it too difficult for him. But Gary Schott always loved going last so he could do his donuts.
Good guy.
At the end, he always loved to do his donuts. But Gary is a great guy. Still in the business. Deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Definitely a great guy.
This one's question for Brian, and you kind of told us before we went on air the kind of answer, but it was the picture of the officer standing on his bike when your truck was on the 48s. And Richard Scott says, question for Brian. There's a photo of Cardiff Giant on 2.5 Rockwells and 48s with a motorcycle cop looking like he's writing a ticket. Was that staged or real? What's the story?
That was actually real. I drove the truck to, at the time, my girlfriend's high school, now my wife. And coming back, we were driving on the road and we got pulled over. Not by the motorcycle cop. His name was went by Smokey. We got pulled over by an officer, which then called another guy, and then they come out and they said they want to stage this photo and do this photo, and the photo ended up in the local Argus newspaper for Fremont. But and then they let us go and say, look, just don't drive that thing on the street. You can't. It's not street legal for 100 different reasons. But that was we really got pulled over. And then it became a photo op for Fremont PD.
Kirk with another question. Have you guys thought about having a die cast made of either truck? I know the Green Lights Kings of Crunch series, they do a lot of the throwback old school trucks. Have you guys thought about getting into that realm? Because I've bet a lot of people would love to have die casts of your guys' trucks from back in the day.
That'd be kind of neat. I don't know how to go about it, but that would be awesome to do.
Yeah, I've kind of pushed that around with the tribute truck and try and do that. And I have a friend that made some of those by the name of Terry Woodcock, and it's quite an expensive endeavor to start the tooling of it, and then after that you kind of recoup your money. But it's pretty expensive to do something like that. But it would be nice. I wouldn't mind if somebody wanted to reach out and give me some ideas on what that cost on that. I wouldn't mind. I'd entertain that.
Yeah, I'd be interested in doing that if we knew how to do it.
Another question from Richard Scott. What tires did you run before the 48s? Did you run 18 22.5 Firestones by any chance?
No, the biggest tire I ran before going to 48s was the biggest they had that they were selling for street legal trucks was 44s, I believe.
Yeah.
And last question we'll ask, Lori Mays asks, where would you say is your best show? Like where was like the best show you ever guys did, or like your favorite places to run?
That's a good question.
Reno.
Yeah, probably.
I live here, so I'd say Reno. No, I think the funnest show. Yeah, there were so many, Brian.
LA Coliseum was fun. There was, the LA Coliseum was a good one. But Reno was fun. They were all fun. They were all fun because we would go into the town a week before. Met David Lee Roth. He came to the Monster Truck Show and met with him, and
he signed your jacket. Did you ever wash the jacket?
No, I
it's still on there.
Yeah, no, I put that in a little memorabilia frame. David Lee Roth. Yeah, that was 86. That was in 86. But
I think all the shows were fun because we got to go in a week ahead of time and do promotion for a week. And so we got to know everybody in town, and they would invite us for dinner or take us to lunch. We never got to eat a home cooked meal. I mean, we ate whatever we were traveling.
We met a lot of nice people. But to Lori's question, probably Reno, because that's how we met Lori and all the people that helped us rebuild that truck, and it sold out shows, and it reminds you of Dave Matthews and the guys, the truck pool guys. You don't see the truck pool guys with monster truck shows now, and Ron Mailing and those guys.
Jason Ingram, those guys,
yeah. So
don't throw out Member Grant's Pass and all that. You can't let those Klamath Falls and all those shows. Those were all great shows.
Yeah, good stuff.
Well, before we're winding down here, Mark, any other things you would like to ask Tim or Brian before we head off into the sunset here soon, my friend?
Yeah, I do have really about two more questions. One for Brian. So after you leave Monster Trucks, you create a lot of different inventions as well. You were telling me off camera. Maybe tell the fans about some of the things you invented.
Yeah. I mean, I started off with when you raise up a truck, your steering arm, the pitch on it, you lose some steering. So it was basically a spacer. It's called a steering control block, which kind of got me into the business. And then I did have a machine shop. I'm in construction now, own a construction business. And I did a stretching machine called Cardiff Stretch Master. That was when I was doing some stuff with martial arts and wanting to stretch. And so that was kind of fun. Yeah, there was a couple of things. And then I had of course, a machine shop.
You had a machine that took the radial tires. Did you take the?
Oh yeah, we did.
The rubber straps around trees.
Yeah, I was a partner in with Waste Management and another big company to recycle tires. So the tire would go into this machine. It would shred it, separate the steel, separate the rubber. Like when you watch football, Monday Night Football, or any of the football, when you see those guys sliding and the sort of look like some black dust coming out of the turf, that's chrome rubber. So we did that, but the technology out of Australia didn't work very well.
He's a MacGyver. That's it.
Yeah, always something. So I 18 years into construction now, so I think I found my where I need to be.
Oh yeah, and I got to ask you, Tim, this is as well. We talked earlier. The trucks were featured in the 4WD Action magazines, the Associated Press. I've got actually a Japanese magazine that features Cardiff Giant in it. Does it ever surprise you guys just the reach that those trucks had, and even in a modern sense, when you get younger fans such as me and Brad who remember those trucks and are fascinated at the stories behind them?
I've said since I first talked to you, Mark, and the younger guys that I've talked to, I appreciate you younger guys remembering us old guys that did this day in and day out for 365 days a year with 2 or 3 weeks off. maybe around Christmas time, but we traveled every day, did a show every weekend, and never got any most time off. I always appreciate the young people that remember us and still like the old school trucks, leaf spring trucks. I call the new ones modified buggies now, class 10 buggies with a body on them. It's not, to me, it's not monster trucks. Yeah, they look like a monster truck, but they're not like what we did back in the 80s. And I think a lot of old school guys would agree with that.
And there was a lot of us. There was a lot of us, King Crunch and a lot of the, the old school stuff. And car crushing was just a step towards what you see today. Again, there's no more cars. It's all dirt mounds and stuff like that. But nowadays, what they do now is more entertaining for the young kids. I mean, the wheel stands and the flips and the stuff like that. But it had to start somewhere. And
it just evolved. It just evolved. It just got better. It just kept getting.
It got better. It got better because nowadays, I think just running over cars probably wouldn't have turned into the industry that it is now.
True on that. And hey, thank you guys as well for your efforts helping to establish it, both on the West Coast and as the industry it's become today. Thank you both for all the blood, sweat, and years, shall we say?
Yeah, thank you for remembering us. And like I say, we're just a part of a big crowd that back in the 80s that all contributed. But thanks for remembering us and inviting us on this.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys. Keep in touch.
Oh, definitely. And thank you guys for coming on. Thank you, Mark, for hosting this episode. I love your enthusiasm for the sport, especially the old school stuff. And, it gives me a better appreciation. And also, as a West Coast man myself, Alberta, Canada, thank you guys for, doing amazing things for West Coast monster trucks because, like we've talked about, if it wasn't for you guys and Seth Dalton and so many others in the West Coast, there wouldn't be, a lot of the sport that we have now on the West Coast of monster trucks. So thank you both.
Dave Matthews. Yeah.
Dave Matthews. Yeah.
Oh, and John Borba, rest in peace.
Yes. Rest in peace, John Borba.
Rest in peace, John Borba.
I was going to mention that at the very beginning. I completely forgot. So I do apologize, but rest in peace, John Borba. What a inspiration, in the industry, gave a lot of teams and so many people, their first start and, he will be missed. And, he's up there reunited with Lloyd Massey, who we lost as well quite a couple of years ago. And again, gentlemen, thank you for coming on. It's been an honor to have you guys on. And, hopefully we can all stay in touch. And, if, anything you guys need, if you guys want to come on again, just let us know and we'll definitely have you guys go on again and, get you guys on with some of the other West Coast legends and let you guys just have at it and tell stories. I think that'd be awesome.
That'd be fun.
That'd be fun. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right, Brad. Thanks, Tim. Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, guys.
Love you. Okay. We'll talk.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you for getting those guys on the podcast. It was awesome. Dude, if people don't know, me and Mark have known each other for a long time. Great friends. Him, me, Cheech, so many others came from the MTM2 video game world. And we just thank you, Mark, for coming on and spearheading this whole thing, man.
First and foremost, thank you and Dan for having me on. Really a great opportunity. I'd like to know to anyone watching this, if you want to hear stories about my announcing in Monster Truck Madness 2, Bradshaw does have some more than likely, and he can vouch for the quality of it there or severe lack thereof, one of the two.
That was like 2007, 2008. And look at you now. Like, I'm so proud that you are in the industry and kicking ass, getting flown out you're going to Montana, which is really cool. I'm so proud of you, buddy. And, I love having you on here and, it's so cool. It's awesome, man. Yeah.
And you just made me realize something, Brad. I just realized I literally started like the live event announcing 10 years after I started announcing MTM2, and I'm like, wow, we're on a journey right now and having fun. And thank you to all the fans who come on out, let us have fun. Thanks to everyone who's given me a chance. And this year, I'm looking forward to crushing it, shall we say?
And guys, next week, like I mentioned at the beginning, next week is going to be Mark Schrader. It's going to be a pre-recorded episode. We recorded last week after the episode we did with Johnny K. We recorded the one with Mark Schrader. Then the week after that will be a live episode with Mark. We weren't able to get into the Speed Channel stuff. We kind of that'll be on the live episode. But before we go, guys, check up on your friends and family. Mental health is a very, very important thing. It's something that I've struggled with, plenty of others. If you're struggling, going through anything, there is hotlines that can help you. Reach out to somebody. It could save your life. You know, I like I mentioned before, I've messaged Cheech when I've had issues. I've messaged Mark, so many others. Like, if you're struggling, please reach out. We need you on this earth. You know, and like I say, every episode, I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. I don't care. It is something that we need to make a priority, guys. So, Mark, again, thank you, buddy. It was awesome having you on guest hosting, and we'll have to definitely do it again next month or whenever we can figure out a schedule. I'd love to do one episode a month with you, you know, doing these episodes. I think that'd be really cool. Kind of give fans a different look into the industry from your eyes and your perspective of the history that you love so much about the sport.
I would be down for that, Brad. And to touch also on the mental health thing you mentioned, I just want to say to anyone out there who's struggling with your mental health, you matter. If you're on my friends list, feel free to send me a message, and I'm willing to listen.
And by the way, in here, there's a guy, Joe Massey. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Alberta boy. I love seeing it. I'll go Alberta. Go Alberta. Grand Prairie here. So I had to say that. Before we go, Mark, you know, MW Entertainment, that is your company. You do announcing of monster truck shows. Is there any social media that people can find you at with MW Entertainment, yourself, kind of where you're going to be, your bookings? Where can people find you at?
So I have my Facebook page, MW1 Entertainment. So MW1 Entertainment's the Facebook page. I have an Instagram, I believe it's Mark Werner 0267. Just got that recently too. And obviously my personal Facebook page as well. So a couple different things. Still getting some stuff finalized for this year. But hey, I always say wherever I am, my goals is rock the house, and I intend on doing that. So simple as that.
Well, Mark, again, thank you for coming on. Guys, you can follow me at the only Monster Truck Canucker on Instagram. Bradley Shaw Designs, I'm kind of in the works of rebuilding my website for that. So keep an eye out. Big things coming. I'm very excited. Some things are kind of in the works right now. And check me out on Instagram. Like I said, Instagram. Thank you guys for all the 5-star likes and reviews on the podcast. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me and Cheech, you know, entering in our 10th year doing this. Again, guys, next week, for the next 2 weeks, it is Mark Schrader Takeover. And as we always have said since day number 1 on the podcast, everybody, keep the rubber side down and the shiny side up, everybody. Peace.